Okay, oops. Okay, Jazz. I'm gonna get on with the intraoral stuff that we started. I think you've gotten the 5 key points you must understand. There's a tiny point source of the X-ray. It's got to be far away, so it's got to be a sun setting on the horizon, throwing off horizontal beams going across the way. The subject, the tooth, should be far away, and that means those beams point, the X-rays coming from the tiny point is going to spread out, but it will appear parallel if they travel a long distance. And then if they appear from that parallel, you're not going to have, and if they hit you parallel right in the chest, straight on, if you're the tooth, then you will not have elongation or shortening, okay, of your height if you're the tooth, right? And then you want the wall that the shadow is projected onto, the sensor, to be as close as possible to the tooth, and that way you won't lose resolution, because if the beams are coming from far away, they're going to envelop you as well if there's enough space behind you. If there's not enough space behind you, then what will happen is that it's just going to be, you're going to get a high resolution. So tooth needs to be close to the X-ray, but the source needs to be far away and a point. If the source is coming from up above, okay, you're going to get, effectively going to get shortening. If the source is, so in other words, you're going to get elongation. If the tooth is coming from up above, yes, you're going to get shortening. If the beam is coming from down below, so if the cone of it is held too much of an angle like this, and you've got an X-ray there, okay, and if you're going to get if it's coming from below, then you're going to elongate the tooth on the X-ray. If it's coming up above and you've got it like this, then you're going to make the tooth very short. Okay, so you ideally want it parallel. It is difficult to get it parallel because ideally you want the beam to go parallel like this, hit the X-ray, hit the tooth, and hit the X-ray behind. So 2 layers here, 2 layers here, 1 layer is the tooth, 1 layer is the X-ray, and the beam is like this. This is ideal. If you're taking a bisecting angle X-ray, and why would you do that? Because this is the tooth. You would have to put the X-ray like this. Why? Because you've got the palate here. If that's the case, you have to draw an imaginary line here, and then your X-ray has to hit that line dead straight in the chest, not this one. So you're actually going to come from effectively above the tooth, where you would otherwise get your shortening of the tooth, but you won't in this case because the film is at an angle. Okay, and so that's basically that. The other points that you have to know after you've gotten those 5 points is that we've talked about the purpose of intraorals. You must always get the apex in its entirety. The apex is the most important part for intraoral pictures because you're only taking one arch of the teeth. You're not taking upper and lower. So you're either taking the upper or the lower, and those are called periapical intraoral x-rays. Bite wings are also intraoral, but we're not concerned about the roots. The only purpose of bite wings is to determine crown margins, bone levels interproximally from the teeth, decay underneath the fillings, and interproximal decay on healthy teeth. And you're going to see upper and lower teeth at the same time. From distal of the canine, you're going to have all the premolars and molars in the upper and all the premolars and lowers in the lower with one bite wing. So you get quite a lot of teeth in that, and the teeth have to be biting down together. But it's important to have the teeth biting down on a piece of paper, because if you, and so that means half the x-ray is up above, half down below, and so that's flat, that's close to the teeth. The x-ray is very close to the teeth, and the teeth are right there, and then we have the x-ray coming flat. So that's a very good representation. If you get those straight lines and if you get things parallel, then you can make direct measurements as you do to see how many millimeters I can go down to place an implant, to how much, how short you are or how long you are with your root canal. So all of that is just fine. I'm just trying it around this way here. So then we're going to be talking about occlusal film, and an occlusal film is literally the size of a credit card, and it's a number 4 size film. The bite wings for adults are number 2, so an occlusal film is number 4, and those are put right into the bite like this, right? And you shoot directly straight up, or you can shoot directly straight down, but you can shoot down from the top of the head, which means that you're going to get some of the frontal bone, you're going to get some of the nose, and you're going to get this. So when you're shooting from top, you tend to angle it a little bit, because otherwise if you shoot from the top of the head, you're going to have to go through your frontal bone and you won't see anything, because your frontal bone and your upper teeth are all in the same line. And so for that reason, the beam has to come down from this way, or this way. So on the maxillary, we're always going to have a slight angle, right? Because going through the top of the head doesn't make sense. Whereas on the lower, if it's here, you can shoot straight up, or you can shoot at an angle there, as per your notes, okay? And so that varies a little bit. And so on the upper, you've got 3 angles, A, B, and C. But A takes frontal bone and there's less to see, whereas you can imagine if you get B and C, you're going to just run through your nose, which is mainly cartilage, you'll be able to see more. And the purpose of these is that you're looking for cysts and you're looking for fractures of the premaxilla or fractures of the mandible. And of course, if you come at an angle, you don't have to involve this frontal bone in there. And if you come high from an angle, you might catch the orbital plates as well. And all of that gets squashed into one film here. So you do need to come at an angle typically to see where migrating canines are for ortho, or if you have an accident where all bits are broken. On the maxilla, on the mandible, if you shoot straight up and down, I'll include in this picture somewhere up over here, a picture of the occlusal surface of the maxilla, of the mandible, and then of course you can see where the permanent teeth are, and that means just one X-ray, one exposure, and you get so much information. So it's a very useful technique, and it's a very useful X-ray to have. The other use for it that you have in the lower is because your salivary glands are there, and your occlusal film goes right back there to the back of the distal of the premolars. So you're catching all of the sublingual and not submandibular, but certainly the sublingual glands, and salivary calculi can be located there, and so that's quite important. And so so the types of occlusal film, you can have the 90-degree occlusal, the incisors can be 110, and you can also have on the mandible, 90-degree occlusal is. Yes, that's straight up and down. That's what you've got at the bottom right-hand corner of page 10 in your notes. You can have those different angles to catch different things within the anatomy of the mandible. And in the coming slides, we're going to see a lot more about the anatomy of the mandible and, of course, the maxilla. On page 11, it's quite important that you see the right angulation. Okay, so hang on. Yeah, so on top of page 11 then, I think it is important that you know what error happened. Basically, okay, so if you're shooting from a bite wing and your film is like this, and you want this to be a nice right angle, like so, if you hit it dead flat straight, you're going to get all the teeth lining up in a row. But if you come at an angle, then you're going to get you're not going to get the teeth flat on. You're going to get the teeth at an angle, so you're going to have overlap. So the width will be less, and you're going to see overlap between all the teeth. You're not going to see the contact points of the teeth like this, right? You're going to have overlap, and so it might disguise precisely those things that you're looking for. So the angles are very important. The angulations for the intraoral periapical x-rays, they're also very important, because basically you have to remember that if you are shooting, and this mainly applies to the maxilla because that's where the angulation errors come in, that if your film is here and your beam is coming this way, okay, if you're going to get elongation of the teeth if the beam is below the ideal straight angle, and you're going to get shortening of the teeth if your beam is coming from above. If it's coming from above, just think of it like this way. If it's coming up from above, you're squashing the teeth. If it's coming from below, you're making the teeth long. So that's basically it. And that's where it's important for you to see halfway down the page 11. And it's showing you the different issues. And you'll see on the left-hand side, halfway down, the central beam is here on the left side. You've got the central beam that is coming from below is going to cause elongation. If the central beam is coming from above, you're going to get the teeth looking very short. Okay, and that's very important to understand. I'm sure they'll ask you that. You'll see in the first diagram to the left of that page 11. So there you've got the tooth like this, and the X-ray is tilted. So that means a tooth this size is going to be superimposed onto an X-ray like that. And so what's going to happen there is you're going to get elongation, because this tooth, if it's only this tall and it's going on here, it's going to be spread over the whole plate like that, right? And why? Because that's coming from below the angle, because you're coming below the right angle. When I say the angulation, it's angulation that hits the plate of the X-ray plate. So if this is the angle of the thing, and if this is the tooth, if this is the tooth, I'm talking about the plate, the X-ray plate being on this side. It's where the beam is coming relative to the plate. If the beam is coming from up above onto the plate, the tooth in between is going to be made shorter. If the beam is coming from down below onto the plate, the tooth is going to be made longer. Okay, so that's what I mean. So it's the angulation to the plate, not so much to the tooth. I'm certain they'll put one of these pictures in there. They'll give you multiple choices as to which one is going to create elongation and which one is going to create shortening. Okay, and then further down that page now on 11, these are talking about the anatomical landmarks, and these anatomical landmarks pertain to intraoral pictures, intraoral X-rays. The one for Panaxes come later, but these anatomical landmarks you need to know are for intraoral film, and you have to understand that you can pick these things up with an intraoral X-ray. You don't need the panoramic for it. The sinus is very common. I'll see if I can insert a picture into this slide with my software and then send this thing to you. And so you must be aware of the sinus is very common to find that dipping down as a hollow area up here in the molar area. It is very common to see the zygomatic process superimposed when you're taking an X-ray of the upper left 6, because the location of the zygomatic process is in the upper 6 molar area, and you're going to see this sort of cross-section of the zygoma in there. It's very common. So the sinus and the zygoma, and sometimes in the middle you will see, if I'm taking an X-ray here, I'm going to see the incisive foramen, which is up here, which is the hole where the blood vessels and nerves come, which you'll remember from anatomy. It's like a heart-shaped hole, and that comes in behind, and you can see that it looks like a periapical lesion. It looks like an abscess sitting between the incisors. That's very common. And then, of course, you can get nasal sinus and the nasal septum going right up there. That happens all the time when you're doing root canals and front teeth. You'll pick up nasal septum, nasal sinus, and you'll see the lesion, the lesion-like thing, the incisor foramen in front. So don't forget those. And then, of course, with a good intraoral X-ray on the bottom, you will indeed see the inferior dental nerve, and you can see the external oblique ridge. You can just see a hard line that comes down on the outside. That's pretty common. And then if you're doing endo around 4 and 5, you may well see the little hole, which again looks like the incisor foramen, but it's a hole for a nerve again, and that's sitting at the root tip of 4. Sometimes if you get your angle wrong, it may look like that it's sitting on it looks like a periapical lesion on a 4, but it's very round and quite distinctive. So that's that. So let me make this one a shorty, and then I will send this to you, and then I'll start in the panoramic.